Not from that culture, but yes, I'm good to go.
Cool. For those who would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, let's please go ahead.
But the song's fine.
To the
flag
of the
United States of America,
Republic
stands one
nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's Monday, August 28th, 2023. The time 7:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards. Here. Trustee Cranker.
Here.
Trustee Harper.
Here.
Trustee Bearma.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here. Thank you very much. Do we have any staff or board revisions to this evening's agenda?
We would, I would like to request that we move the request for executive session. That's item 12. To discuss the Parks Recs and Facility Director position to be before item 11.
Got it. And when we get to that point in the meeting, will we enter executive session, exit executive session, and then consider a motion to enter executive session?
Yes.
Conduct that business, exit, then consider a new motion to enter again and then exit?
Yes, we will.
Okay. And Clayton, if you could email me the language for that before we get to that point in the meeting, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, great. So any concerns or objections to reversing items 11 and 12? Okay. We'll now open up the meeting for public comment. We don't have anyone in person, so if you're on Zoom and you'd like to make public comment, please click the raise hand button. We'll promote you to panelist. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to the first item of our agenda, which is presentations and proclamations, the 2022 audit review with Jim Hinkle of Hinkle and Company. And Jim's sitting right here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, driving from Frisco. It's a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. I enjoyed coming down here. It's a gorgeous little town, and thank you for the invitation. So I would like to talk a little bit about the audit process that we go through, and then since I'm here in person and we got a little time, I'll take a few minutes to explain the financial statements to those that aren't familiar maybe with governmental financial statements. We start our audit by updating our understanding of the internal control structure of the accounting department. We look at the policies and procedures, what we call the control features like the approval of invoices, the account coding, things of that nature. And primarily what we're looking for is a segregation of duties. An accounting transaction typically takes 3 steps: the initiation, the approval, and the recording in the books and records. And we don't want one person to do all of that, so that there is a segregation of duties that reduces substantially the risk of fraud or unintentional errors that may occur. Then throughout the process of the audit, we will ensure that those control features, the approval process being documented, those kinds of things are happening as intended and that they can be relied upon. So that's part of our audit process. The result of that is that we are looking to see if there are any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. Those are terms of art for us. A significant deficiency is defined as a design flaw in the system of internal controls that would allow an error to go undetected in the ordinary course of business. And a material weakness is a significant deficiency that would possibly result in a material misstatement to the financial statements. We did not find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. We talked about a material misstatement of the financial statements. Technically, from our point of view, the audit standpoint, a material misstatement is not a certain percentage of the financial statements of revenues or fund balance. It is enough that a user of the financial statements would come to a different conclusion based upon the additional information. So sometimes that might vary depending upon if there's loan covenants or other things like that. What's material may fluctuate from time to time, but that's what technically the definition of material misstatement is. Then we get into the actual audit of the financial statements. We use what we call substantive procedures, which is a fancy way of saying tested details and analytic review. Tested details is pretty much what it sounds like. We drill down into account balances and we look at the underlying transactions and we look at supporting documentation to ensure that the accounts are accounted for correctly. That may be looking at invoices of capital asset additions, looking at invoices for subsequent disbursements to ensure all liabilities are actually recorded, looking at subsequent receipts for receivables to ensure that they were actually collected and they were valid, things of that nature. We also use analytic review where we compare this year to last year, this year to budget. We run some ratios between revenues and assets and expenses and liabilities. And we're looking for relationships that we either can't explain or didn't expect. And if we find those, we'll do more test of details on those specific accounts until we can come to a conclusion. And that is our audit report. And our opinion is what we call an unmodified opinion, which in layman's term is a clean opinion, states that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with general accepted accounting principles and applied on a consistent basis with the previous year. That's the answer that you also want to hear. Just real briefly, a financial statement for a government entity is different than a normal business financial statement. You've got three financial statements or balance sheets and income statements in your package. Sometimes that creates a little bit of confusion. The first one is what we call a government-wide financial statements. You have one column for the governmental activities, one column for the business type activities, and it's on a full accrual basis, just like any other business, Microsoft, Apple, General Electric, what have you. Revenues are recognized when they're earned, expenses are recognized when they're incurred, and that way you can compare them. The difference between a governmental activity and a business activity is the source of revenues. Generally speaking, governmental activities, at least 50% or more of the revenues come from what we call non-exchange transactions or taxes, where in a business type activity, it is a exchange transaction or a fee for service. We sell water and we get paid in return for selling that water or other type of utilities. The second financial statement is the governmental funds financial statements. And that is where we break out the actual different funds. You only have really two columns, a general and an all other. It has to be a certain size to be reflected on the face of this statement. The smaller funds then are regulated to the back of the report, and they're called non-major funds, and we accumulate those together. This governmental funds statement is on what we call a sources and uses fund basis. And so we're looking at all of the resources that were available to the city or town and what did they do with those resources. So you basically have no long-term assets or long-term liabilities. You recognize revenues that were either collected during the year or within 90 days after the end of the year, which is why we have receivables, and expenses paid during the year or paid within 90 to 120 days after the end of the year, which is why we have accounts payable and accrued liabilities. But if we went out and borrowed money, then those proceeds from the debt would actually be a revenue in or a source of money. And then capital expenditures that we spend that would normally be capitalized and depreciated over the useful life, those are recorded as expenditures because they are uses of funds. So the whole idea is that from a taxpayer point of view, they want to know what's the sources of all the revenues the town received and what are all the uses of those resources. And that's what that middle financial statement shows. And we include a reconciliation between the full accrual and the modified sources and uses so the user can see the difference of those. Typically, it's like the fixed assets and And then capital lease payable and accrued compensated absences payable, because those generally aren't paid out in cash. And then on the income statement, it's depreciation expense that's recorded on the full accrual, and then capitalized additions and those kinds of things. And then finally, we break out the business type activities, the water, the sewer, by fund. And that is also on a full accrual basis, because that is like a business. And so the same accounting of full accrual is recognized as not any different than the government-wide statements. Therefore, reconciliation. Then as you get through the footnotes, that basically explains a little bit more details, such as a breakdown of all the capital assets by category, additions, deletions, depreciation expense. The capital or the liabilities will show a little bit more explanation of the actual long-term debt and the liabilities that you have, and then other required discussions on the basic financial statements of the entity. And then we get back to the back of it, and that's where we compare the actual to budgeted numbers. And if you had an original budget and a final amended budget, we'll list both of those, and we'll compare the actual to whatever that final amendment budgeted numbers are, so that you can compare how you do. One of the key components of budgeting going forward is looking at how you did in the past to say, has the budgeting process been reliable in the past? So therefore we can rely on it in the future. That's what this budgetary comparison schedules allows you to do, is look at how accurate the historical budgeting has been to know how well you'll be able to rely on the current and future budgets. And so that's why that's also included. About the only thing that you don't have, there are a lot of municipalities will include what's called a management's discussions and analysis on the very front end of the financial statements. That's management's discussion to say, hey, this is kind of how our financial statements look, and these are kind of the changes. You all have elected not to include that. And we just disclose that in our audit report, that management has elected not to include that management discussions and analysis. If you were a larger municipality and you had bond underwriters looking at your financial statements, that MD&A may become more important. But for you all, you're not really missing anything by not having that in there. So that kind of gives you an overview of the overall financial statements. Any questions on the audit process or on what the financial statements are trying to present and convey to the reader? No. Your financial statements from the size of municipality that you are really pretty good. And what it shows is that you've had some good financial discipline over the prior years that have built you up to this point. You have in your general fund just under $2 million in cash, and your annual expenses are about $4 million. So you've got a little bit under 6 months worth of expenditures in cash. That shows two things. One, good fiscal responsibility, that you do have cash on hand to be able to meet your needs. But it also shows that you are a good steward to the town, in that you have not over collected in taxes that aren't needed and built up excessive amounts of cash and fund balance. And so there's always a balance there, kind of a teeter-totter, if you will. You want enough to be stable, but you don't want too much where you take advantage of your citizenry, your taxpayers base, and overcharge on sales tax. There's been a couple of places up on the Front Range that have got themselves in trouble, that have budgeted capital improvements each and every year and never really spent that money, and justified taxes and utility rates. And now they've got substantial amounts of cash on hand and excessive amounts of fund balance, and the taxpayers are starting to really push back on that. But I think you guys got a really good balance with what you have. And again, that shows good financial discipline over the years that have built up to this point. And if you look at the sources of uses fund, if I could move my page down a little bit more. You had a net loss of $17,000 in your general fund, net profit of $74,000 in your combined other funds. That just shows good balance. You don't want to make money every single year. You just keep building up, building up, building up. You don't want to lose money every single year, but just like any municipality, nonprofit always wants to kind of ebb and flow fairly close to that break-even point. The only difference to that is sometimes we see in the capital improvement funds where we build up lots of money in the capital improvement funds over a period of 5, 6, 7 years, and then we spend a whole bunch on that, whatever that capital improvement is, and you have a big loss where you finally spent that money, and that's pretty typical. But in your general fund, having that balance, just ebb and flow right around that break-even point, 1 year positive, 1 year negative, shows again good financial discipline and using the taxpayers' funds in a wisely fashion. Finally, I think that we issued the report before June 30, and we sent it off to the state auditor's office. So your filing at the state auditor's office was done on a timely basis. And we're starting to get back after COVID, where everybody was way behind. And more municipalities are finally starting to get back and file on a timely basis now. So you all were filed in good shape. And you had very little, if any, federal awards. So you didn't have to have additional audit requirements for having substantial federal awards. We would have to audit compliance with those. So all in all, it was a good audit. We also issued a required communication letter, and that is we're required to communicate in writing if certain events occur in the course of an audit. And we had nothing to communicate in that letter. We did not have any difficulties in the course of the audit. We did not have any disagreements with management. We did not have any adjustments to the books and records. And this one's kind of odd. We're not aware of management talking to other auditors. And that goes back to about 15 years ago when opinion shopping was kind of big. And if we disagreed with accounting methods that the organization would use, then they would go talk to other people until they found one that would agree with them, and then they would fire us and hire them. And we have to communicate that. And we didn't have any of that. Christine,
Yep.
Great help. That is money well spent for you all. That has made our audit much easier. It has alleviated the requirement to have a big accounting department within the town. So that is money well spent with what you have with her, and that's been very good. Finally, from what I think is most important for the council to hear is that we, as the auditors, felt like we had open transparency throughout the audit process. Everything that we asked for, we were provided in a timely fashion. We were never refused access to any source documents or agreements or other information that we asked for. So we felt like we had the ability to ask for whatever we needed in order to perform an audit under our standards. And I think that's very important for you all to hear that open transparency was there. So, any questions?
Sounds like a best case scenario audit report.
It's a very good one. And I'll say this, in some smaller municipalities, we're finding good accounting help. I don't always give this kind of report. Very good. You guys have done a very good job, and your statements and your books and records are in good shape.
Excellent. Thank you.
That sounds so nice.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Gloria. We are an addition to her daily job. We asked for a lot of information. And so that's just extra work for her. And thank you very much for all your assistance on a timely fashion and things like that, getting us information as well.
This was great news.
Another year under the belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that presentation. That was so clear, and the definitions were really helpful.
Good, good. Well, it helps if you better understand what you're looking at and why you have all the different financial statements that you have. And unfortunately, governmental accounting is so much more complex than business accounting. And that's where you get people that are less educated in accounting and financial reporting. And now they've got statements that are more complex than a normal business. And so you would think it would be kind of the other way around, but it was nice to be able to have a little extra time to kind of explain some of this stuff.
Thanks for coming and for getting this done. Having the actuals going into budget season is really just exceptional.
Yes, that helps with your budget going forward, very much so. All right, any other questions?
Thanks for coming out.
You're welcome. I'm going to go find some local place to have a great dinner.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. The next item on our agenda is new business item 4A, letter opposing NTIA's requirement of a letter of credit in relation to the broadband equity access and deployment funding.
Can you promote Shaq, please? And hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. What we're asking for is staff direction here to submit these letters, but I can give you a little bit of background on why we're opposing the letter of credit as it relates to a current project that we weren't able to fund. Shaq, welcome. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, board members, for having me and for allowing me to speak remotely. So, as you know, we had attempted to go after the middle mile funding from the NTIA, and they had a letter of credit requirement in their packet that we asked for a waiver from. And it looks like the BEAD funding, broadband equity access and deployment, that's going to go out to the 50 states from the NTIA, that as things currently sit now, will also have a letter of credit requirement. A letter of credit is good for the NTIA in that it's a way for them to protect their investment and make sure that projects get completed. However, for people going after BEAD funding, which very likely would be for Silverton and for other areas around the region, a letter of credit is a bank saying that should a grantee not complete any of the work for whatever reason, that that bank will guarantee the money to the NTIA. And so it's very secure for the NTIA. However, it's very problematic for any local governments applying for funding in the state of Colorado. Article 11 of the Colorado Constitution specifically prohibits any local governments and even the state government for taking on debt for any reason whatsoever other than water infrastructure. And the lenders that put up the letter of credit treat a letter of credit exactly like a loan, because if it's called upon, they're obligated to put that, they're obligated to pay out to the NTIA. And so in addition to requiring collateral, they also require interest on the letter of credit the entire time that it's sitting there, and it's considered debt. And so it basically prohibits any local governments from being able to pursue the BEAD funding in the state of Colorado if it comes out with that requirement. In addition to being debt, it's also very expensive. The BEAD money is already going to require a minimum of a 25% match. And to put up collateral for another 25% that just sits in a bank and you pay interest on it, it's basically like requiring a 50% match. And at that point, one has almost got to wonder if it would be better to just self-fund something. And so there has been a lot of opposition to the letter of credit requirement. Commissioner Salka is working with Colorado counties and with the National Association of Counties to oppose it. And he's the one that sent this letter asking us to help get all the local governments to join on and oppose the requirement for a letter of credit for the broadband equity and access deployment funding that will be coming out next year.
Thank you very, very much. It sounds like it's a no-brainer for us to support this request, in my view.
You made a strong case.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for doing
Thank
this
you so
work.
much. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyone have any questions or concerns?
I was just gonna say, this came up a bit when we had our Region 9 meeting here, and Shaq presented there as well, and just again, how this is like federal money being rolled out, but really small municipalities, and especially places like Colorado, where we have constraints in our constitution around this, it just really hamstrings us from being able to access any of this funding. And so, thank you, Shaq, for that work to speak on our behalf.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this evening.
We are just asking for staff direction to send the letter out to local congressional representatives on behalf of the board.
Great. Do we have any objections from the board?
Great.
Provided. Excellent. Great. Our next new business item is 4B, staff and banking changes.
Sure. And so this is some house cleaning that we have. First, I'd like to congratulate Melina Marks Lannis on her promotion to town clerk. Matt Green is no longer with us with the town of Silverton, but we wish him the best, and we're really excited for Melina's promotion. In that, there's a couple housekeeping items here that as far as giving access to view and to deposit the town of Silverton's Citizens Bank account, as well as close a couple of accounts that have not been used in a while. So figured we'd do it all in one meeting and get these meeting minutes over to them once they're approved after next meeting, and then they'll be able to facilitate that.
Thank you. So we're looking for 3 motions related to this request that are each in the memo.
Should we do them, do we need to do them one at a time, or can we wrap them all up together?
Preferably one at a time so that we can have
Separate.
actual meeting minutes
Copy.
reflect the motions. Thank you.
I will make a motion to give access to Melina Marks to view and deposit into the town of Silverton's Citizen State Bank account.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards.
yes.
Trustee Kränker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you.
I will make a motion to close the credit card account with Citizen State Bank.
Second.
Thank you. And if we're going too fast, it's okay, but roll call whenever you're ready.
Sorry.
No, all good.
Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Kränker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion to close the savings account with Citizen State Bank and transfer fund to the general fund?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
All right. Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Kränker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is consideration of the consent agenda items.
And we do not have last meeting's minutes. We will get those on to the next meeting. I wanted to point that out. We have our additional items is the Clarion contract, as well as a letter of support for a single track society.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Kränker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Farmer.
Yes. Great. Next item on our agenda is staff reports.
So I was not able to generate a staff report last week, but a complete report will be on the next meeting. I did include the budget timeline here that was approved by the finance committee after we reviewed it. I would note that the nonprofit requests are now open and those close. And I didn't write that down. That was a note for myself to write it down and I didn't. I think those close on October 11th. Yep. And town hall is closing this week at 2 p.m. every day. We're reorganizing and remodeling some offices, really just rearranging and trying to get physically organized. So that is our goal here. And then we are hiring for 2 positions right now. We're hiring for a deputy clerk who loves accounting. And we're also hiring for a public works maintenance worker who loves public works. That's something with staff.
Yes, I would like to include with the nonprofit request form, we are making that a fillable format online to where you can go online, click a link on our Facebook page once we go live, fill out the form, we get a copy of it along with all required documentation. You cannot complete that form without that required documentation, so make sure you have it all at once. And the Anisi Grand Park or Anisi Park grand opening is on schedule. The building again looks fantastic. If you haven't gotten to check it out, it will start Summer Sound September 8th, Friday night in Memorial Park. Saturday morning, we are going to start our grand opening street fair with the Silverton Creative District, as well as dedication ceremonies to the Anisi family and Mike Garriak for his contribution. And we also have a bonus concert that evening, which will be held in Anisi Park. So please come out and visit.
All right.
Great, thank you. Now move on to item 7, committee reports, with first up, San Juan Regional Planning Commission. Sally has passed the baton firmly to Jim.
She usually kicks it off.
Well, that's good because I'm going to pass it right back. I don't have my notes with me, to be truly honest with you.
Okay, it was, let's see, the meeting reviewed 3 items. First, an improvement permit application for David Cole in, for a project of 1,000 square foot cabin project located in Prospect Gulch. Next, we heard an improvement permit application from Adam Rex. That's regarding a 2,000 square foot cabin on the, off of the Kendall Road, adjacent to County Road 33. And third, we continued the conversation and heard a planned unit development presentation for the Silver Cloud Lodge project. That is also kind of going by Bonanza Boy LLC. That's a lodge and some employee housing located in the Mill Creek or the Chattanooga turn off of Highway 550. Big projects.
Were all 3 of those projects supported?
They were all 3 supported. And they were,
With a
this was not,
unanimous vote.
this was not the first time we'd heard from all 3, so it was different stages of these projects. Yep, and unanimous votes.
I'm curious to see how the future of this interacts with our backcountry ski community, because David's project is right below some very frequently traveled shoots. And Chattanooga Corner is obviously a very highly trafficked backcountry ski train as well.
Those, yeah, that came up a little bit too. And just kind of like as a heads up to how we manage and interact with users and the backcountry.
Yeah, it seems like our theme for the year is the public use of private property.
Yeah. It's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
It's very San Juan County.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for the report.
Anything else, Jim?
No, ma'am, that was perfect.
Okay, great. And then there was also a Silverton Chamber of Commerce meeting without any yelling.
To be fair, we have great meetings. It's a really great group to hang out in Jim's basement. Yeah, I think it's a really great opportunity for me to share with the business community what's happening.
Great
Jim's
info.
not here to give us all around. I think it's a really great opportunity just to share with folks in the business community kind of hear out from what's happening with the town. So I think people have appreciated that, just getting on their radar, some of the town meetings we're having, discussions on wastewater, NEC Park, all that. So I really use that as a platform to communicate out as well. But yeah, we had a pretty quick update. One thing that the chamber is trying to do is really strengthen the partnership with the creative district. So utilizing some of our local artists and our local creatives for things that the chamber or the town might be doing. And so that involved kind of fixing up some of our kiosks that are starting to look a little bit better around town and working on the kiosk that is right where the train comes in. And so that was kind of a highlight. And then trying to keep that kiosk even open year round. And we're taking the approach of having the QR codes, right? So the information is not so stale, it stays updated. So just having better signage around town to help our visitors and our locals kind of know what's happening. And then kind of a highlight is the Colorado Tourism Office has really been connecting with the chamber and with Deanne, really seeing a lot of growth in tourism in the Four Corners region and kind of saying, how can we support these smaller communities that are seeing a lot of impact? And so potential for some additional grant dollars and kind of training coming through the chamber for, again, how we manage the influx of visitors that we see and provide a great experience and also take care of locals and our natural resources. So that's kind of a great highlight, and they're working with Deanne on some potential opportunities there. And then I think one focus for the chamber and working with San Juan Development Association is like, how do we support businesses that maybe aren't seeing those visitors come through their doors? So like, we know that a lot of people are here, and what might be the disconnect for businesses that may not be turning those folks into sales and able to see revenue from that. So really the chamber being a little bit more directed and working with San Juan Development Association to see what support can provide to some of the small businesses that may not be experiencing the benefits from a variety of people in town.
The visual and kiosk updates are phenomenal. So thank you to every member of the chamber for getting that done. That's really cool.
Yeah, Dan really spearheaded that, I think. So it's nice to see some signage up. We got an update from the Single Track Society from Cliff, and that was really exciting. I think there's a lot of energy around the activity that's happening on the hillside, and just that the vision is being seen how it will be a more accessible trail for a variety of people. We have lots of very hardcore stuff in this town, and it's from Cliff's perspective, nice to see some more things that will be potentially available for more types of people and bikers and walkers and runners. Yeah, so that was kind of the main updates. You've probably seen on Facebook some promotions of Silverton from all the way from Australian groups writing about ski joring to a write-up in travel and leisure. So as everybody can tell and knows, we are on the map. And just these are a couple of ways we're highlighting how we can kind of manage our users, our user experience, and what that feels like here in town. Anything else, Jim, I missed?
Just we also highlighted the #1 morning show in Paris, France, was in Silverton for 3 days, riding the train, going around town, filming the shops, filming the people. Really neat. So we're gonna have an expose in Paris.
Cool.
Brush up on your French for next summer.
That's right.
I know.
Oui, oui.
Everyone get your baguettes.
Mhm.
Maybe it's time for someone business to open up a new bakery. Just putting it out there.
Thank you very much. The next board update is our committee report is the library board meeting.
So we met on the 17th, and we did not get the congressional direct spending request that we applied for in March for the library renovation. So we're looking at alternate funding sources right now. Library programs are still robust as ever. Like tomorrow, there's a root jam session at 7, and Wednesday, there's a library story time at 11:30. So I think the best way to find those is if you just Google Silverton Library, because it's kind of a weird I don't know what you call the IP address or something. But you can just Google it and you'll.
And following on Instagram.
And following, yeah.
Updating on Instagram.
Definitely follow on Instagram. So, yeah, but Misty's crushing it.
And just put a plug out there, go in the doors of that library. She has new content available. My kids were super jazzed about audiobooks. That's this.
Oh, yeah.
It's this tiny
Really
device.
cool.
They don't even need smartphones and the kids can just listen to a whole audiobook. So 3 of my children are walking around my house with headphones on and no one's talking to each other. But just check out the library because Misty really has a lot of great resources there of all ages, stuff in Spanish. Just go check it out.
Fantastic. And our final committee report is the finance committee.
Yeah, so the finance committee met. We did have a request. Should we go over the request for our utility reduction, or should we wait until? Because I know you guys were doing
For information, yeah.
maybe we did have a request for utility reduction, but we're gathering more information before we bring that before the entire board. We went over the budget schedule, which is included in the packet. We did finish our nonprofit request forms, and so those are open. So we'll be doing that in October, which is also on the budget packet. And Gloria gave us a demo of ClearGov and walked us through the new accounting software. It's going to make it really easy for everybody to see exactly where everything is. It's really going to help with transparency. It's a marvelous program as far as I can tell. So really happy about that. And I hope Gloria's happy about it too.
I'm
Because
ecstatic.
it looks like it makes her life a lot easier, and it's going to help with transparency. It's going to cut down on the amount of time that she needs to go through. You know, we can get rid of Excel. So
It's already saved me 6 hours. I didn't have to enter in the numbers myself this time. They were imported over from Cassell. So that was money worth spent.
yeah,
It was amazing.
And Gloria has mentioned before reduction in error.
yeah,
Yes.
And
Yeah.
transparency. I mean, I think it speaks to our audit today, like just the level of transparency that is being established at town hall is really exceptional. That
Yeah.
people can feel like they'll be able to just dive into, you want to get into town budgeting, you can dive into it and see
But-
beautiful graphs and charts.
yeah. And that's it. It's graphs, it's charts. It's not just a line item with, data. It's really well put together, and the way it's illustrated makes it really easy to read and comprehend and digest. Did I miss anything, Jim or Dana?
Awesome. Cool. Well, the next item on our agenda are trustee reports.
Okay, one thing, we had a work session earlier on committee assignments and something I meant to ask in that. So we had a work session earlier on committee assignments. Everyone can catch that later if you want to.
So that could have been under the committee reports.
Yeah, this is a
We had a committee
segue,
for
this is a
committee.
segue topic. I was wondering if our positions changed or we are not on a meeting or now on a meeting. What is the procedure for making sure that we know we're in the right email group and the right notifications and.
Yeah, and I will help facilitate that on my end. Like Liv just joined the.
Exactly.
I just
Yeah.
for all that information right now for the National Energy Board because they meet in 2 days. So I will update kind of my list and then send that out to everyone.
Great. And we have an updated.
Probably individually.
The public to know who's doing what.
Yeah, we can publish that in our next meeting packet
I think
But we have
should.
it on the website too, does it?
and we will update it on the website. Yeah.
Thank you. And my other trustee report isn't so much a report. I just wanted to kind of lift out and lift up that we have a special election happening in October. We're voting on OHVs on the route, not on the route. I think the date of that election is October 3rd. But we may have received ballots in the mail.
So the
So,
overseas ballots have gone out.
okay,
The mail window for regular ballots is September 11th through September 18th.
thank you for that update.
And the PSA will be posted this week. It will also be going into the paper as well for local citizens. It is a mail ballot, so you will receive it by mail. You can drop it off at Town Hall by October 3rd. I believe it's 5 p.m. or you can mail the ballot back. Make sure that you do sign the back of your ballot for it to be counted.
Great, let's
Thank you.
all vote.
Yeah, we typically have pretty good voter turnout, so let's not disappoint.
Mhm.
Everybody vote.
Challenge.
Great. Any other trustee updates? Or reports? Sounds good. So then we will move to continued business, item 9A, resolution 2023-12, a resolution of the town of Silverton recognizing the need for and creating a local housing authority.
So there are several suggested motions in this memo that include the adoption of the resolution, as well as signing the certificate establishing the housing authority, and then setting the first meeting date and giving staff direction to draft the bylaws for that meeting date. And then the first meeting date could possibly be September 11th before the regular meeting. Or however you guys, I was just trying to think of like a good time. We do have a work session on the second meeting of September, but we don't have one currently for the 11th. I know we're getting into budget season, and if you saw that budget timeline, there are some additional work sessions in there. So just a consideration, if there's another night that works, we can do that as well. But again, this is a funding mechanism for right now, but we do need to go through the motions and kind of establish it so that it's legitimate.
And the composition of the housing authority is essentially this board.
It's just this board, yes.
Should we add that to the committee spreadsheet as well?
Oh, I guess we could.
It's like putting something on the to-do list that you've kind of done. Check it off.
Yeah, but at least it calls it out.
On the,
But it does call it
It
out.
calls it out
Yeah.
that it exists.
Sure.
yeah.
And reminds us.
And I do have the certificate to pass around for signatures. too.
Should we do that following the motions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can do that.
Do people have availability to meet ahead of the September 11th meeting? Any conflicts coming in an hour early?
I won't be here for the September 11th meeting,
Okay, not attending at all or attending remotely?
attending at all.
Okay,
I won't be here either on September 11th.
okay, so that we need to find an alternate option for the usual one.
All right, I will reach back out with an alternate option.
Do we want to try and do the 25th, which would be before the next meeting?
So we do have a work session already scheduled on that day,
Is that just our standing work session or is that something else?
20.
You had it on the budget work session to do budgeting.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
Already scheduled.
I should put that in my computer. Okay, so we'll just see an email with the doodle poll or something.
I will reach back out with a doodle poll. It might not be on a Monday night, so.
Okay.
I'll see what works best for it.
Do any trustees have questions or comments or discussion relating to the formation of the housing authority? And let's get motion wild.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-12, a resolution in the town of Silverton recognizing the need for and creating a local housing authority.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
trustee Kränker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. So that's actually the only motion. Then we'll pass down for signature.
And we'll set direction, give direction.
Not so wild.
No, slightly wild.
We've had much more confusing motions.
New return.
Okay, so, and I guess we kind of already did the direction to set find a date that works for everybody, at which Clayton will present the draft. Sweet. And it sounds like you'll have a couple extra weeks, Clayton. Great. Well, that was our last substantive item, so we'll now move to public comment. We do not have anyone in person, so if you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panel. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And tonight we have two more items on our agenda, which are each executive session items for anyone who has forgotten, since it's fortunately been such a long time since we've done many executive sessions. How this works is we will consider a motion to enter executive session. If the motion passes, we will then enter executive session and we will request that anyone on Zoom voluntarily leave the meeting. The executive session itself will be a closed meeting. Then we will rejoin the public Zoom. And since we have two here, it's a little more complicated. At that point, we will consider another motion for a second executive session. If that passes, we will then ask anyone who's rejoined the meeting on Zoom to voluntarily leave. And then following that executive session, we will rejoin the public meeting again, but the only purpose of that rejoining the public meeting is to formally adjourn in a public setting. So at this time, I will request that anyone who's on Zoom, please exit the Zoom because we've learned that if we boot you from Zoom, you will no longer be able to join the Zoom meetings ever again in the future. We have to create a new account with Zoom in order to allow members of the public back into Zoom. And why don't we just take like a 2-minute break while we wait for people to leave Zoom?
And at this time, we do have two participants. If you could please leave the Zoom so we don't have to stop the meeting. Thank you so much. At this time,
we need to do the motion before we close it. So never mind. I lied about the 2-minute break, or we can still take the 2-minute break and then do the motion. But
Okay, you and I have a seat.
I just have to use the restroom.
let's do the motion and then take the break because they're gonna have to like stop the tube and everything. So, okay, so would someone like to make? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see.
I'll make a
Wait,
motion.
I'm sorry. I have to look
Yeah, you
at
have-
this. Okay, so this one is slightly different than normal. So Todd, before we consider the motion to enter executive session, we'd like to ask you if you'd like to request that this proposed executive session be held in an open session.
No.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to enter executive session under CRS section 24-6-4024F to discuss personnel matters regarding Public Works Director position. Parks and Rec. Oh, sorry. Parks and Rec, there's a typo in my instruction. I apologize. I'm going to say that again, just so there's no
Facilities, Parks and Recreation Director.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session under CRS section 24-6-4024F to discuss personnel matters regarding the Facilities, Parks and Rec Director.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Kränker,
Yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Okay, so now we will take a 2-minute break while we get the Zoom and everything set up.
And Clayton, as well as Jim, if for some reason the meeting